Sumit Singh arrest. Yes, you heard it right. Jenny Slatton's husband Sumit Singh has been arrested. In the glittering world of reality television, love stories often capture our hearts. But behind the cameras, reality can be far darker than what we see on screen. Sumit Singh became entangled in nearly $280,000 of debt through online gambling platforms. Not only that, he kept pressuring Jenny Slatton to pay off his secret $280,000 debt. As Sumit Singh failed to repay the debt, a lawsuit was filed against him, and he was subsequently arrested. According to the court's verdict, Sumit Singh has been sentenced to 1 year in prison. With this truth exposed, the situation turned even more tragic. Under constant mental pressure and facing numerous problems, Jenny Slatton eventually had no choice but to divorce Sumit Singh. Lastly, Jenny Slatton divorced his husband Sumit Singh. Later, to start a new life, she decided to marry a man named Zach. This is not just a story of love gone wrong. This is a cautionary tale of secrets, betrayal, and survival. To understand the magnitude of the betrayal, we must first understand what was at stake. Jenny Slatton was not your typical reality star. A woman from Palm Springs, California, she was nearing retirement when she found herself swept up in an unexpected romance. Like many modern love stories, it all began online. What started as casual conversations soon blossomed into something deeper. On the other side of the world, in India, Sumit Singh was equally captivated. He was decades younger, adventurous, and eager to prove that age was just a number. When Jenny first appeared on 90 Day Fiancé, the other way, viewers saw her as a hopeful romantic. She had left behind her comfortable life in the United States to pursue love in a foreign land. For many, her courage was inspiring. Friends and family questioned her choices, but Jenny remained steadfast. To her, love was worth every sacrifice. Sumit, too, played the role of a devoted partner. He comforted Jenny through cultural shocks, stood up against his conservative family's objections, and promised her a future filled with happiness. At first glance, it seemed like a modern-day fairy tale, an older American woman finding true love with a younger Indian man, all against the odds. But beneath the surface, cracks were already forming. Behind Sumit's smiles and reassurances, there were secrets he hadn't yet revealed. Jenny, blinded by love, believed she had finally found her soulmate. The early years of their relationship were filled with challenges. Endless family drama, questions about money, and whispers from outsiders that their union was doomed. Yet, Jenny fought back against every obstacle. She insisted that love was stronger than cultural boundaries, and for a time, it seemed like she was right. But what Jenny didn't know, what she couldn't even imagine, was that Sumit carried a secret far darker than family disapproval. A secret that would eventually shatter their marriage, land him in court, and leave her brokenhearted. As the cameras rolled and fans cheered them on, Sumit was living a double life. One in front of Jenny, filled with promises of devotion, and another behind her back, where temptation and addiction slowly consumed him. Jenny thought she had crossed the world for love, but in truth, she was stepping into a storm that would soon engulf her entire life. At first, Jenny and Sumit's romance seemed like a beacon of hope. Their love had survived distance, skepticism, and relentless criticism from both sides of the globe. Yet, behind every smile and romantic gesture, small cracks began to show. The first and most obvious crack came from Sumit's family. His parents had long opposed his relationship with Jenny. In India, where cultural traditions and family expectations run deep, their age gap was more than unusual. It was scandalous. Jenny was old enough to be Sumit's mother, and his family saw their union not as love, but as an embarrassment. Jenny felt that weight every single day. She wanted nothing more than to be accepted as Sumit's partner, to be welcomed into the family with open arms. But each attempt ended in disappointment. His parents were cold, skeptical, and often outright dismissive. For Jenny, it was heartbreaking. For Sumit, it was suffocating. He loved Jenny, but he also craved the approval of his parents, an approval that never came. This constant tension began to wear on them. Arguments that once ended with laughter now lingered. Silence crept into conversations where joy once lived. Jenny started asking questions. Why do they hate me so much? Why won't they let us just be happy? But the family drama wasn't the only storm brewing. There were subtle signs, small moments that didn't make sense. Times when Sumit seemed distracted, restless, or anxious. Moments when he disappeared into his phone or laptop late into the night. Jenny chalked it up to stress. After all, dealing with family rejection was hard on anyone. Still, there were odd patterns. Some evenings Sumit would be unusually cheerful, almost euphoric. Other nights, he was tense, moody, and unreachable. Jenny, blinded by her love and determined to keep the relationship alive, dismissed these inconsistencies. She told herself, he's just tired, he's just dealing with pressure. But in reality, Sumit was already sinking deeper into a hidden world, one Jenny knew nothing about. The cracks widened further when money became a recurring subject. Jenny, living off her limited retirement savings, began to notice small financial inconsistencies. Bills weren't paid on time. Bank balances didn't always add up, and every time she asked, Sumit brushed it off with an excuse, a mistake, a late deposit, a misunderstanding. Jenny wanted to believe him. After all, this was the man she had left everything for, her country, her home, her comfort. Doubting him felt like doubting herself, and so she chose trust over suspicion. But as every viewer of 90 Day Fiancé knows, love can sometimes make people blind. Jenny was no exception. She ignored the shadows gathering around her, unaware that they were only the beginning of a much darker storm. To outsiders, Jenny and Sumit were still the couple who fought for their love against all odds. But inside their home, the cracks were beginning to spread, cracks that would eventually tear their marriage apart. Jenny's story was about to shift from romance to survival. For months, Jenny brushed off the signs, the late nights, the sudden mood swings, the unexplained gaps in their finances. She believed Sumit when he said he was stressed or tired, and she convinced herself that every relationship had ups and downs. But what Jenny didn't know was that her husband was fighting a battle she could not see, a battle he was already losing. It began innocently, or so Sumit told himself. At first, it was just a curiosity, an online poker game here, a sports bet there. Platforms were easy to access, and with only a few clicks, he was swept into a digital world of flashing lights, spinning reels, and the illusion of quick fortune. To Sumit, gambling was an escape. When his parents rejected Jenny, when friends whispered about their age gap, when reality became too overwhelming, he found comfort in the adrenaline rush of betting. The stakes didn't just distract him, they made him feel alive. At first, the amounts were small, a few $100s lost here, a small win there. Jenny never noticed, and when she did ask, Sumit assured her it was just a little fun. But as every gambler knows, it never stays little for long. Wins made him bold, losses made him desperate, and soon the numbers began to climb. Thousands turned into tens of thousands. Each time he lost, he told himself he would win it back with the next bet. But the hole only grew deeper. By the time Jenny started sensing something was wrong, Sumit was already entangled in nearly $280,000 of debt. The scale of it was staggering. He had borrowed from online lenders, maxed out credit lines, and taken risky loans that charged sky-high interest. Every day, the pressure mounted. Collection emails filled his inbox. Anonymous phone calls demanded repayment. And still, Sumit couldn't stop. Jenny began to notice changes. He was nervous around the phone, always rushing to pick up calls. His hands shook when he logged into his laptop late at night. There were unexplained withdrawals from their shared account. When Jenny questioned him, he grew defensive. "Why are you always doubting me? Don't you trust me?" He would snap, shifting the blame onto her. Jenny, hurt, but still clinging to the man she loved, would back down. "Of course I trust you, Sumit. I left everything for you." But deep down, her instincts told her something was terribly wrong. Sumit's addiction wasn't just financial, it was emotional. His moods lived and died with his bets. When he won, he was euphoric, showering Jenny with affection. When he lost, he was distant, irritable, and cruel. Jenny began to feel as though she was living with two different men, one who promised her the world, and another who seemed lost in a dark obsession. The tragedy of addiction is that it never stays hidden forever. Secrets have a way of surfacing, and Sumit's was about to come crashing into the open. One evening, Jenny accidentally stumbled upon a string of emails while using Sumit's laptop. They weren't messages from friends or family. They were notices from lenders, debt collectors, and gambling platforms. The subject lines made her blood run cold. Final notice. Immediate payment required. Account overdue. Jenny's hands trembled as she read the amounts. Thousands upon thousands, owed to strangers she had never heard of. Her heart sank with every line. The man she thought she knew, the man she had given up everything for, was living a double life. When she confronted Sumit, his face drained of color. At first, he tried to deny it. Then he shifted the blame, saying he had been stressed, that gambling was just a way to cope. But as Jenny pressed him, the truth spilled out. The losses, the loans, the staggering $280,000 debt that now hung over both of them like a noose. Jenny felt the room spin. Everything she had built with him, every sacrifice she had made, suddenly seemed meaningless. Love had carried her across the world, but lies had left her stranded in a nightmare. And worse, Sumit didn't just confess. He begged. He pleaded with Jenny to help him pay off the debt, insisting that together they could overcome it. But for Jenny, it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust. And trust, once shattered, is almost impossible to repair. What Jenny didn't realize was that this secret wasn't just going to cost her money or peace of mind. It was about to drag her into a legal storm that would change both of their lives forever. The cracks in their marriage were no longer hidden. They had exploded wide open, and the world was about to see just how far the fall could go. Debt has a way of multiplying. What starts as a single misstep can snowball into a mountain too heavy for anyone to carry. For Sumit Singh, the $280,000 he owed wasn't just a number on a screen. It was a storm he could no longer outrun. And for Jenny, it was the beginning of the darkest chapter of her life. At first, Jenny tried to believe in him. When Sumit tearfully confessed, she held on to the hope that this was a mistake, a one-time fall, something they could somehow manage together. She told herself, love is about forgiveness. Maybe if I stand by him, he'll change. But Sumit wasn't changing. Instead of pulling back from his addiction, he doubled down. He convinced himself that the only way to escape debt was to gamble his way out of it. One big win, he told himself, and everything would be fine. The loans could be repaid. Jenny would forgive him. His parents might even respect him again. But that big win never came. Each loss widened the gap. Online lenders charged crushing interest rates. Collection calls grew more aggressive. Some creditors threatened legal action, and Sumit's desperation only made him sink deeper into the gambling platforms that had already ruined him. Jenny, meanwhile, was left in a constant state of anxiety. She was retired, living on limited savings, never imagining she would be dragged into such chaos in her golden years. Suddenly, every dollar mattered. Grocery trips felt heavier. Bills became suffocating. Nights once filled with laughter now echoed with silence and stress. Sumit's pressure on Jenny grew unbearable. He pleaded with her to cover his debts. He told her she was his only hope, that without her, everything would collapse. At first, Jenny resisted. I can't do this, Sumit. I don't have that kind of money. I came here for love, not to pay off your mistakes, she cried. But Sumit pushed harder. His words shifted from pleading to guilt-tripping. Didn't you say you'd stand by me no matter what? Didn't you leave your whole life behind for me? Then prove it. Help me. Lend me something. Anything. Jenny felt trapped. She had sacrificed so much already, and now the man she had trusted with her heart was demanding her financial security as well. Behind the scenes, creditors were circling. Some sent official letters. Others arrived in person, knocking on their door with harsh demands. Jenny began to fear answering the phone or opening the mailbox. Every knock at the door felt like a threat. Worse, the scandal began to ripple outward. Word of Sumit's gambling debts spread among neighbors and acquaintances. Whispers turned into judgment. Jenny, once admired by fans of 90 Day Fiancé as a woman who fought bravely for love, now felt humiliated. The man she loved was drowning, and he was pulling her down with him. The breaking point came when Jenny discovered that Sumit had secretly pawned some of her belongings, jewelry, electronics, even small sentimental items, to buy himself more time. When she confronted him, his response was cold, almost detached. "I had no choice," he said. "It was either that or let them come after me harder." Jenny's heart shattered. Trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. And now, it wasn't just debt on paper. It was betrayal she could see with her own eyes. The numbers continued to climb, interest piling on top of interest, until repayment was no longer possible. What started as gambling losses had become a legal nightmare. Creditors began filing formal complaints. Lawyers got involved, and soon the whispers of a lawsuit turned into reality. Jenny sat alone many nights, staring at the ceiling, asking herself the same question over and over. How did I end up here? She had crossed oceans for love, fought for a marriage no one believed in, and now she was watching it collapse under the weight of lies and debt. The debt wasn't just financial anymore. It was emotional, mental, and spiritual. It consumed every part of her life, and with each passing day, she realized more and more that she might not be able to save Sumit or their marriage. But the debt collectors weren't interested in love stories or heartbreak. They wanted repayment. And when repayment didn't come, they took the only step left. They filed suit against Sumit Singh. And suddenly, the story of Jenny and Sumit was no longer just about a broken marriage. It was about to become a courtroom drama that the world would soon hear about. Debt is not just numbers on a page. It is weight. It is shadow. It is a constant whisper that follows you from morning to night. For Jenny Slatton, that whisper soon turned into a scream. By now, the truth was undeniable. Sumit Singh had lost nearly $280,000 to online gambling. Lawsuits loomed, creditors stalked them, and the life Jenny had dreamed of, the quiet, simple happiness of love in India, was slipping further away with each passing day. But Sumit wasn't just drowning in his own mistakes. He was pulling Jenny down with him. At first, his words were wrapped in desperation. "Jenny, please. You're all I have. If you don't help me, I'll lose everything," he begged, his eyes wet with tears that Jenny wasn't sure were real anymore. Jenny, her heart breaking, tried to stay strong. "Sumit, I can't. I don't have that kind of money. I gave up my life in America for you. My savings aren't endless." But Sumit didn't stop. He pressed harder. "You get a pension. You have something saved. Just help me with a little bit. I'll pay it back, I swear." Jenny shook her head. She had already given him more than she could afford. And still, the debt ballooned. Still, the creditors came. The tone of Sumit's pleas soon shifted. Desperation gave way to guilt-tripping. "So all those times you said you loved me, they were lies. You won't even help me when I need you most, after everything I've done for you?" Jenny's hands trembled. She had fought his family, endured ridicule, and stood by him when no one else would. And now, somehow, she was the villain in his story. The pressure grew heavier. Each morning began with questions about money. Each night ended with arguments. Jenny no longer felt like a wife. She felt like a hostage, trapped between her love for Sumit and the crushing reality of what he was asking her to sacrifice. The worst part was the fear that if she didn't help him, something terrible would happen. Sumit's moods were unpredictable. At times he was frantic, pacing the apartment, muttering to himself. At other times, he was cold and silent, staring at the wall as if lost in a darkness Jenny could never reach. She started to fear what he might do, not just to himself, but to her. The creditors added to the nightmare. Phone calls became relentless. Some were polite but firm, demanding repayment. Others were threatening, their voices sharp and intimidating. Jenny often froze when the phone rang, her stomach twisting into knots. Neighbors began to whisper. People in their building had noticed the visits from debt collectors, the arguments that spilled into the hallways, the late-night shouting matches. Jenny, once proud of the love she had defended on television, now felt humiliated and ashamed. There was no peace left. Sumit's demands reached a breaking point one evening when he stood over Jenny, his voice shaking with anger. "If you don't help me, Jenny, they'll ruin me. Do you understand? They'll take everything, and it'll be on you. You're my wife. You're supposed to help me." Jenny, her eyes filled with tears, whispered the only truth she had left. "I can't save you, Sumit. Not from this. Not from yourself." The words hung heavy in the air. For the first time, Jenny allowed herself to see what was happening. This wasn't just about debt. This was about control. This was about a man who had gambled away not just money, but trust, love, and the very foundation of their marriage. Still, the pressure never stopped. Each day brought new demands, new fights, new heartbreak. And slowly, Jenny realized something she had never wanted to admit. Love alone was not enough anymore. The woman who had left everything behind for love was now being asked to give up the last thing she had: her dignity, her safety, and her sanity. Jenny's heart was breaking, and soon so would their marriage. Because the more pressure Sumit placed on her, the more certain she became that their love story was over. The truth always has a way of surfacing. You can bury it under lies, cover it with excuses, or distract with empty promises. But eventually, it rises. And for Jenny Slatton, the truth about Sumit Singh's double life came crashing down in a way she could no longer ignore. For weeks, Jenny had lived under suffocating pressure, the constant begging, the relentless phone calls, the late-night arguments that left her in tears. She had given Sumit the benefit of the doubt more times than she could count. She had told herself he was stressed, that maybe he exaggerated the numbers, that perhaps things weren't as dire as they seemed. But the truth was far worse than she ever imagined. It began with an envelope, a thick, official-looking packet that arrived by courier one humid afternoon. Jenny's name wasn't on it, but the address matched theirs. With trembling hands, she placed it on the table, waiting for Sumit to come home. But curiosity and fear gnawed at her. She opened it. Inside were documents, stamped and signed, detailing lawsuits filed against Sumit Singh. The numbers leaped off the page: $280,000 in outstanding debt, with multiple creditors demanding immediate repayment, interest charges, legal fees, threats of asset seizures, and the most chilling line of all, a notice of pending court action. Jenny's heart sank. The excuses he had fed her, the small losses, the temporary setbacks, were lies. Every word he had spoken was carefully crafted to hide the scale of his destruction. By the time Sumit walked through the door that evening, Jenny was waiting, the papers spread across the table like evidence in a courtroom. "Explain this," she demanded, her voice shaking with anger. Sumit froze, his face drained of color. For a moment, he tried to deny it, reaching for excuses. "These aren't what you think. They're just misunderstandings, paperwork errors." But Jenny cut him off. "Stop lying to me. $280,000, Sumit? You told me it wasn't that bad. You told me you had it under control. Do you even know what you've done?" The apartment fell silent, the weight of her words pressing down on them both. Sumit sank into a chair, his head in his hands. For the first time, the bravado was gone. The charm, the excuses, the guilt-tripping. All of it collapsed under the mountain of truth. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," he whispered. "I thought I could fix it. I thought I could win it back." Jenny's eyes filled with tears, but not of sympathy. These were tears of betrayal. "You didn't just lose money, Sumit. You lost me. You lost everything we built." The confrontation opened a floodgate. Jenny began connecting the dots. The pawned belongings, the strange visitors, the endless nights glued to his laptop. Every odd behavior suddenly made sense. The man she had defended to the world, the man she had believed in when no one else did, had been hiding a secret that threatened not only their marriage, but her very sanity. That night, Jenny barely slept. She replayed every moment of their relationship, every sacrifice she had made. She remembered the ridicule she endured from strangers online, the scorn from Sumit's family, the whispers from neighbors. Through it all, she had stood tall, believing that love would be enough. But love cannot survive lies this big. The next morning, she made a choice. For the first time, Jenny began to think not about saving Sumit, but about saving herself. The days that followed were a blur of legal letters, angry phone calls, and painful silences. Sumit, broken and cornered, oscillated between begging for forgiveness and lashing out in frustration. Jenny, drained and heartbroken, grew colder. Her trust was gone, and with it, her hope for the future. The truth was no longer something hidden. It was printed in black and white, sealed in legal documents, stamped by the courts. And soon, it would no longer just be a private shame. It would become public. Because lawsuits don't stay in envelopes forever. They lead to hearings, to police involvement, to headlines. And for Jenny and Sumit, the world was about to watch their downfall unfold. The day the lawsuit arrived, everything changed. Until then, the debt had lived in the shadows, hidden behind Sumit's lies, buried under excuses, whispered in late-night arguments. But now, it was stamped with official seals, signed by lawyers and delivered by the courts. For Jenny, it was the moment her worst fears were confirmed. This wasn't just a private problem anymore. This was the law. This was real. The lawsuit was brutal in its detail. Page after page outlined the loans Sumit had taken, the interest that had ballooned, the gambling platforms where his money had vanished. Each document was like a knife twisting deeper into Jenny's chest. It wasn't just $280,000 in debt. It was $280,000 of betrayal, stacked neatly in legal terms. Neighbors began whispering as word spread. Men in suits showed up at the apartment, knocking on their door with documents in hand. The building staff looked at Jenny differently now, no longer with the warm curiosity of foreigners, but with the cold judgment reserved for scandal. Jenny, once proud of her love story, now felt humiliated. Every time she left the apartment, she wondered who knew, who was talking, who was secretly pointing fingers. But the worst part was how Sumit reacted. Instead of stepping up, instead of taking responsibility, he collapsed deeper into denial. He insisted the lawsuit was exaggerated, that lawyers were just trying to scare him. He clung to the hope that somehow it would all go away. Jenny knew better. She attended the first court hearing with him, sitting quietly as lawyers rattled off numbers that made her head spin. The judge's stern face made it clear, this was no small matter. The creditors wanted their money, and they weren't going to stop until they got it. Jenny sat stiffly in the courtroom, her heart pounding as Sumit's name was read aloud. Reporters scribbled in their notepads, cameras clicked outside, and she realized with horror that this wasn't just legal trouble. This was a spectacle. Their love story, once broadcast on reality TV as a fairy tale of perseverance, was now a headline for all the wrong reasons. 90-day Fiancé star faces $280,000 gambling debt lawsuit. The headline would haunt her forever. At home, the pressure intensified. Sumit became frantic, lashing out one moment, collapsing in tears the next. He begged Jenny to help with legal fees, to dip further into her savings. Jenny refused. She was done being his safety net. "You brought this on yourself, Sumit," she told him firmly. "I won't let you drag me down with you." The words cut him, but they also set her free. Still, the court process dragged on. Each hearing pulled them deeper into a nightmare. Lawyers argued, creditors demanded repayment, and Sumit's gambling records were laid bare for all to see. Every secret, every lie, every reckless decision was exposed under the harsh light of the courtroom. Jenny sat through it all, her face stoic, her heart breaking. She had once believed love could conquer anything: age, distance, family opposition. But it could not conquer addiction. It could not conquer lies. And now, it could not conquer the law. The final blow came when the judge ruled that Sumit had indeed failed to repay his debts and had violated multiple financial agreements. The verdict was harsh but inevitable. Sumit Singh would face criminal charges for fraud and reckless borrowing. Jenny closed her eyes as the gavel struck. The sound echoed like the shattering of their marriage. What had begun as a love story on television had ended in a courtroom filled with shame. And for Sumit, the next step wasn't back to Jenny's arms. It was into the custody of the law. Because soon, the lawsuit would turn into something much darker, an arrest. The lawsuit was bad enough. The court hearings, the headlines, the endless documents exposing every detail of Sumit's gambling addiction. It was all more than Jenny ever imagined she would endure. But nothing prepared her for the day the police came to their door. It was early morning when the knock rattled the apartment. Jenny, half asleep, thought it might be another creditor. But when she opened the door, two uniformed officers stood before her, their expressions firm, their presence undeniable. "Is Mr. Sumit Singh here?" one of them asked. Jenny froze. The words felt heavy, final. Her stomach dropped. She turned towards Sumit, who was sitting on the couch, pale and silent. He didn't even try to deny it. He knew why they were there. Within minutes, the officers stepped inside. They read him his rights. Jenny watched, numb, as cold steel cuffs closed around his wrists. The man she had once seen as her great love, her soulmate, now sat in handcuffs in their living room. Neighbors peeked out from their doors. Whispers filled the hallway. Jenny lowered her head, ashamed, as cameras from local reporters began flashing outside. It was a scene she would never forget. Sumit being led away, his head bowed, his wrists bound. The news spread fast. 90-day Fiancé star arrested in gambling debt scandal. It was everywhere: television, tabloids, social media. The love story that once made fans swoon had turned into a cautionary tale. Jenny, heartbroken, attended the trial. She sat in the back of the courtroom, her face hidden behind dark glasses, hoping no one would recognize her. But there was no hiding from the truth. The trial was public, and the details were devastating. The prosecution laid out everything: the $280,000 in gambling debts, the fraudulent loans, the reckless bets that destroyed not only Sumit's finances, but also Jenny's trust. Bank records, loan documents, screenshots from online betting platforms. Every piece of evidence painted a picture of a man consumed by addiction and deception. Jenny listened, each detail cutting deeper. She remembered the nights he told her he was working late, when in reality he was gambling online. She remembered the times he snapped at her questions, the excuses, the lies. And now, hearing it all laid bare in a courtroom, she realized she hadn't just been living with a gambler. She had been living with a stranger. Sumit's defense was weak. His lawyer argued that he was a victim of addiction, that he needed treatment, not punishment. But the court saw through it. Addiction might explain his actions, but it did not erase the consequences. The judge was stern, his words echoing through the room. "Mr. Singh, you have not only destroyed your own financial stability, but you have deceived creditors, betrayed your wife, and shown a reckless disregard for the law. This court finds you guilty." Jenny felt her breath catch. Though she had expected it, hearing the words out loud broke something inside her. The sentence was clear. Sumit Singh was to serve 1 year in prison. Jenny closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. A part of her still loved him, despite everything. But another part, the stronger part, knew this was the end. The trial ended with Sumit being taken away in custody. His eyes met Jenny's one last time, a mix of regret and desperation in his gaze. But Jenny did not move. She did not run to him. She sat still, her face set, knowing that their story was no longer one of love, but of tragedy. The man who once promised her forever was now behind bars. And Jenny, left alone in the courtroom, finally understood their marriage was over. But her story wasn't finished. Because once the sentence was delivered, Jenny faced a new choice: to keep waiting for a broken man, or to free herself from the chains of his mistakes. And soon, she would make that choice. "Mr. Sumit Singh, this court sentences you to 1 year in prison." For Jenny, the sound of the gavel striking wood was like a death knell, not just for Sumit's freedom, but for their marriage, their love, and the dreams she had once clung to. She sat frozen in her seat, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Around her, reporters scribbled notes, lawyers packed up their files, and murmurs rippled through the room. But Jenny heard none of it. All she heard was the echo of that single sentence, 1 year in prison. Sumit turned to her as officers led him away. His eyes, wide and wet with tears, searched for forgiveness, for a sign that Jenny would wait, for a sign that love could still survive this. But Jenny could not move. She could not speak. In that moment, she was no longer the woman who had crossed oceans for him, who had endured the cruelty of his family, who had defended their love against every skeptic. She was a woman betrayed, broken, and left to pick up the pieces of a life built on lies. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Microphones were shoved in her face. "Jenny, will you stay with him? Do you still love him after everything? What's next for you?" She said nothing. Her silence spoke louder than any words could. The drive home was a blur. The apartment, once filled with laughter and promises, now felt like a tomb. Every corner reminded her of what they had lost. The couch where they had cuddled and watched movies. The kitchen where they had cooked meals together. The balcony where they had dreamed of a future. Now, it all felt hollow, haunted by betrayal. That night, Jenny sat alone at the table, the lawsuit papers still scattered across it. The weight of it all crashed down on her. The lies, the debts, the humiliation of seeing her husband led away in handcuffs. For the first time, she allowed herself to say the words she had been avoiding. It's over. The verdict had not just sentenced Sumit, it had sentenced their marriage. Jenny wept until there were no tears left. She thought of the woman she had once been. Hopeful, brave, willing to give up everything for love. She thought of the sacrifices she had made, leaving her family, her country, her home. And now, what was left? A shattered marriage and a husband in prison. But even in her pain, a small ember of strength began to glow. Jenny realized that the verdict was not just the end. It was also the beginning of her freedom, the beginning of reclaiming her life from the shadows of Sumit's addiction. For years, she had fought for love. Now, she would fight for herself. The next morning, Jenny woke with swollen eyes, but a new clarity. She knew what she had to do. She could not wait for Sumit. She could not hold on to a man who had betrayed her trust and destroyed their future. She had to let go. The verdict had sealed Sumit's fate, but Jenny still had a choice to break free, a choice to start again. And soon, she would make that choice official, with divorce papers. After the verdict, Jenny tried to keep living as though life could somehow return to normal, but nothing about her world was normal anymore. Her husband was behind bars. Her reputation had been shattered in front of millions. Her finances were drained. And worst of all, the man she had once believed was her soulmate had turned her golden years into a waking nightmare. At first, she kept telling herself to hold on, that maybe she could endure it. She visited Sumit once after his sentencing. The prison walls were cold, the visiting room filled with a heavy silence that no amount of small talk could disguise. Sumit sat across from her, wearing the standard issue uniform, his hands trembling as he tried to hold hers across the table. "Jenny, please, just wait for me. 1 year, that's all. When I get out, I'll change. I'll be better. I'll make it up to you." Jenny stared at him, her heart torn in two. She wanted to believe him. She had always wanted to believe him. But deep inside, something had snapped. The man who sat across from her wasn't the Sumit she had fallen in love with. He wasn't the gentle, funny, passionate partner who had once promised her the world. He was a broken man, consumed by lies and addiction, who had dragged her life into ruins. Jenny pulled her hands away. "You said that every time, Sumit, and every time, it got worse." His face fell, his eyes filled with tears. But Jenny didn't cry this time. She couldn't. Her tears had run dry long ago. That night, she sat on the balcony of their apartment alone, staring out at the city lights. For the first time since she had left America, she felt utterly empty. She had crossed oceans for love, fought against family disapproval, endured humiliation on national television, and for what? To end up alone, broken, and drowning in someone else's mistakes. The mental toll was unbearable. Jenny felt anxiety like a constant shadow. Every knock on the door made her flinch. Every phone call made her heart race. Nights were sleepless, filled with spiraling thoughts, and haunting memories of what her life used to be. And slowly, she realized that this wasn't just about debt or gambling or prison. It was about survival. If she stayed tied to Sumit, she would lose herself completely. The breaking point came one afternoon when she received another letter, this time not from creditors, not from lawyers, but from a women's support group she had quietly reached out to. The letter was simple but powerful. You deserve peace. You deserve freedom. You deserve better. Jenny read it again and again, her hands shaking, and then something inside her shifted. For years, she had told herself that love meant sacrifice. That love meant standing by your partner no matter what. But now, she understood the truth. Love should never mean losing yourself. Jenny stood up, walked into the bedroom, and opened a drawer. Inside was her passport, still tucked neatly away. She held it in her hands, feeling the weight of her choices, of the years she had given up. Then she whispered to herself, "It's time." That night, Jenny began making plans. Not for another fight, not for another visit to prison, not for another chance to save Sumit, but for her own freedom. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a life without him, a life where she wasn't constantly covering up lies, begging for peace, or paying for mistakes she didn't make. Jenny's breaking point had come, and with it, the courage to take her life back. The next step would not be easy. It would be painful, messy, and final. But it was necessary, because Jenny had finally accepted what she had tried so hard to deny. Her marriage to Sumit Singh was over. Divorce. The word hung heavy in Jenny's mind for weeks. It was a word she had once sworn would never apply to her love story. She had stood on 90-day Fiancé and proclaimed to the world that she and Sumit would make it work, no matter what. She had fought against family rejection, skeptical fans, and even her own doubts. But now, after courtrooms, betrayals, and prison sentences, the word was no longer unthinkable. It was inevitable. Jenny's breaking point had made her see the truth. Staying tied to Sumit meant losing herself. Divorce was not just about ending a marriage, it was about reclaiming her life. But now, after courtrooms, betrayals, and prison sentences, the word was no longer unthinkable. It was inevitable. Jenny's breaking point had made her see the truth. Staying tied to Sumit meant losing herself. Divorce was not just about ending a marriage, it was about reclaiming her life. She began with quiet research. Sitting at her kitchen table late at night, she searched online, how to file for divorce in India. She spoke with a local attorney, her voice trembling as she explained her situation. The lawyer, kind but firm, assured her that she had the right to walk away, that she wasn't bound to carry Sumit's mistakes forever. "You have sacrificed enough," the lawyer said. "It's time to put yourself first." Jenny nodded, tears in her eyes. It was the validation she needed, someone telling her she deserved better. Filing the papers was harder than she imagined. Each signature felt like ripping out a piece of her heart. The documents were clinical, emotionless, filled with lines and clauses about irreconcilable differences and marital breakdown. But for Jenny, each line carried years of love, hope, and disappointment. She remembered their first meeting, the joy in Sumit's eyes when he had finally revealed himself to her after pretending to be someone else online. She remembered their wedding, simple but heartfelt, when she truly believed they had conquered all odds. She remembered the laughter, the private moments, the promises whispered late at night, and then she remembered the lies, the debt, the pawned belongings, the lawsuits, the cold steel cuffs around his wrists. The memories twisted together like barbed wire, love and betrayal, hope and heartbreak. When the day of the divorce hearing came, Jenny walked into the courthouse alone. No cameras followed her this time. No cheering fans. Just silence, broken only by the shuffle of papers and the low murmur of legal voices. Sumit was not there. He remained in prison, serving the sentence that had finally torn them apart. His lawyer appeared on his behalf, offering little resistance. The marriage, after everything, was already dead. The judge asked Jenny a few simple questions. Did she believe reconciliation was possible? Did she wish to end the marriage legally and permanently? Jenny's voice was steady, though her heart raced. "Yes, I want the divorce." The gavel struck. It was over. Jenny walked out of the courthouse with tears in her eyes, but this time, they were not tears of despair. They were tears of release. Tears of relief. For the first time in years, she felt the weight lift off her shoulders. The chains of Sumit's addiction, the burden of his debts, the endless pressure, it was gone. That evening, Jenny sat on her balcony once more, watching the sun dip below the horizon. She held a cup of tea in her hands, breathing deeply. The city bustled below her, life moving on, and for the first time, she felt like she could move on too. The divorce had closed a painful chapter, but it also opened the door to something new. Jenny wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing: she would never again sacrifice herself for someone else's lies. Her story wasn't over, it was just beginning. And soon, fate would lead her toward a man named Zach, and a second chance at love she never thought possible. When the divorce was finalized, Jenny walked away from the courthouse with nothing but her dignity and her freedom. The marriage she had once fought for with every ounce of her being was gone, and though her heart was scarred, she finally felt the air in her lungs again, light, clean, and unburdened. But starting over after a love like hers wasn't easy. Jenny had built her entire life around Sumit Singh. She had left her family, her country, and her comfort behind. She had believed so fiercely in their love that she never once imagined she'd meet a life beyond it. Now in her 60s, she was forced to rediscover who she was without him. The first weeks were hard. Jenny woke up to silence where Sumit's presence used to be. Meals felt empty, conversations non-existent. For years, she had been Sumit's wife. Now she was simply Jenny again. But slowly, the silence began to heal her. She joined local women's groups, connecting with people who had faced their own heartbreaks. She found strength in their stories, realizing she wasn't alone. Others had rebuilt their lives after betrayal, and so could she. Jenny also began to focus on herself for the first time in years. Morning walks replaced stressful late-night arguments. She took up yoga, something she had always wanted to try but never felt she had the time for. She reconnected with old friends back in America through video calls, their voices reminding her of the life she once had and could still enjoy. One evening, as she journaled on her balcony, Jenny wrote a simple sentence that became her mantra: "I am more than what I lost." Day by day, she believed it more. Financially, the burden was heavy, but Jenny was careful. She lived simply, budgeting every rupee, determined never to let debt consume her life the way it had consumed Sumit's. She refused to let fear rule her anymore. Mentally, she was healing too. Therapy sessions helped her untangle the trauma of the last few years. The constant anxiety, the gaslighting, the pressure. She spoke about it openly now, and with each session, the weight lessened. And in her heart, she began to rediscover hope. At first, the idea of love seemed impossible. Jenny told herself she was done. Love had cost her too much. She didn't want to risk it again. But life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. Through a friend in her support group, Jenny was introduced to a man named Zach. He was kind, grounded, and most importantly, honest. Their first conversations were simple, sharing stories of the past, discussing books, laughing over coffee. For Jenny, it was strange to feel her heart stir again. After everything she had endured, she thought her heart was closed forever. But Zach didn't push. He listened. He respected her boundaries. He allowed her to feel safe in a way she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't love at first sight. It was something better. It was trust at first conversation. Jenny began to smile again. Not the forced smile she had worn for the cameras or to cover her pain, but a genuine smile that came from a place of peace. Her friends noticed. Her family noticed. And most importantly, Jenny noticed. She was healing. The world had seen her at her lowest. Humiliated, betrayed, left behind. But now, Jenny was showing herself, and everyone else, that it was never too late to start over. The divorce had closed one chapter of her life, but now, another chapter was just beginning. A chapter filled with freedom, a chapter filled with rediscovery. And soon, a chapter filled with new love. Healing can take months, sometimes years. For Jenny, it felt like a lifetime. She had been through battles most people couldn't imagine, crossing continents for love, standing against a disapproving family, living under the shadow of addiction, and watching her husband led away in handcuffs. After her divorce, she swore she would never love again. The pain was too raw, too deep. Love, she told herself, was a risk she could no longer afford. But life, in its mysterious way, had other plans. Zach came into her life quietly, almost unnoticeably at first. He wasn't a grand gesture or a whirlwind romance. He was a steady presence, introduced by a mutual friend at a local gathering. Jenny didn't expect much that day, just polite conversation and maybe a laugh or two. But Zach was different. He was kind in a way that wasn't performative. He didn't try to impress her with flashy words or promises. Instead, he listened, really listened. When Jenny spoke about her past, her heartbreak, her struggles, he didn't interrupt. He didn't dismiss her pain or tell her to move on. He simply nodded, offered empathy, and reminded her that she deserved peace. For Jenny, it was disarming. After years of being gaslit and pressured, she had forgotten what it felt like to be heard. Their first meeting turned into coffee. Coffee turned into walks. Walks turned into dinners. And before she knew it, Zach had become a part of her daily life. He asked about her day. He encouraged her to keep journaling. He reminded her to take care of herself, not because he expected anything in return, but because he genuinely cared. Jenny began to laugh again. Real laughter. Not the kind that masked her sadness, but the kind that bubbled up naturally. Friends noticed the change. Even strangers could see the glow returning to her face. Of course, Jenny was hesitant. The scars of her past were deep, and trust didn't come easily anymore. There were moments when she pulled back, afraid of being hurt again. "I don't know if I can do this," she confessed to Zach one evening, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can trust love again." Zach reached across the table and gently held her hand. "Jenny, I'm not asking you to forget the past. I'm asking you to let me be part of your future. At your pace, in your way. No pressure, just honesty." Those words stayed with her. For the first time in years, Jenny didn't feel the weight of expectation. She didn't feel pressured to prove anything, to sacrifice herself, or to fight for approval. With Zach, everything felt natural, simple, safe. As weeks turned into months, Jenny realized something she never thought possible. Her heart was opening again. She began to look forward to their time together, the quiet dinners, the late-night conversations, the long walks where they planned nothing and just existed. Zach wasn't perfect, but he was present, and presence, for Jenny, was everything. The world that once mocked her for chasing love across borders now had no say in her happiness. Jenny no longer cared about headlines or public opinion. For the first time, she was living for herself. And in Zach, she found not just a partner, but a friend, a confidant, and perhaps, slowly but surely, the possibility of love again. Jenny had thought her story was over after Sumit, but now, she realized she was only beginning a new chapter, a chapter with Zach. For Jenny Slatton, love had once been a battlefield. She had fought with every fiber of her being to hold on to a marriage that the world said could not survive. She had endured humiliation, betrayal, and heartbreak. And after her divorce from Sumit, she swore she would never step into that battlefield again. But Zach wasn't a battlefield. He was peace. The months she spent with him showed her a kind of love she had never known. It wasn't desperate, it wasn't chaotic, and it wasn't built on fragile promises. It was steady, kind, and rooted in trust. Jenny found herself smiling more often, her laughter echoing through spaces that had once been filled with silence. With Zach, she rediscovered small joys, late-night tea, spontaneous walks, long talks about everything and nothing. He didn't demand she sacrifice herself. He didn't weigh her down with debts or secrets. Instead, he lifted her up, encouraging her to live freely and unapologetically. And slowly, Jenny began to believe again. The idea of marriage had terrified her at first. After what she had endured with Sumit, the word husband carried too much pain. But Zach never pushed. He let Jenny move at her own pace, building trust day by day. One evening, as they walked together along the quiet park path, Zach stopped, turned to her, and said gently, "Jenny, I don't want to erase your past. I just want to be your future." He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple, elegant ring. Not flashy, not overwhelming, but filled with meaning. Jenny gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Tears filled her eyes, not from fear this time, but from joy. "Will you marry me?" Zach asked softly. For a moment, Jenny's heart raced with hesitation. She thought of the pain she had survived, the battles she had fought. But then she looked into Zach's eyes, steady, kind, unwavering. And she realized this wasn't history repeating itself. This was something entirely new. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, I will." The wedding was small, intimate, and nothing like her marriage to Sumit. There were no cameras, no headlines, no family battles looming over her, just a gathering of friends and loved ones, laughter filling the air, and Jenny walking down the aisle with peace in her heart. She wore a modest dress, her hair styled simply, her face glowing with the kind of happiness that comes not from spectacle, but from healing. When Zach slipped the ring onto her finger, Jenny felt a sense of closure she had long prayed for. This wasn't about proving anyone wrong. This wasn't about defying odds or fighting battles. This was about love in its purest form, honest, gentle, and freeing. As they exchanged vows, Jenny felt the past finally lift off her shoulders. The pain, the betrayal, the humiliation, it no longer defined her. She wasn't the woman who had been dragged down by Sumit's lies. She wasn't the reality star mocked for her choices. She was simply Jenny, a woman who had survived and now stood in the light of a new beginning. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Zach leaned forward, kissed her, and whispered, "You'll never walk alone again." Tears streamed down Jenny's face as applause filled the room. For the first time in years, her tears weren't born of heartbreak, they were born of hope. Her marriage to Zach wasn't the start of a fairy tale, it was something better. It was the start of a real, honest, and peaceful life. And as Jenny held her new husband's hand, she realized that sometimes love doesn't come the way we expect. Sometimes it arrives after heartbreak, after tragedy, after you think you've lost everything. But when it does arrive, it feels like coming home. Jenny Slatton's story was never meant to be ordinary. It began as a daring leap of faith, a woman crossing borders, cultures, and generations in the name of love. For a while, it seemed like a fairy tale, the kind of story people watched on television and rooted for. But life is rarely a fairy tale. Jenny faced betrayal, financial ruin, and heartbreak on a scale that could have destroyed her completely. She endured the humiliation of watching the man she loved be arrested, tried, and sentenced. She signed divorce papers with trembling hands, closing the chapter on years of sacrifice and pain. And yet, she survived. She didn't just survive, she rebuilt. She found the courage to start over, to rediscover who she was without Sumit, and to step into a new life with dignity and hope. She found love again, not in chaos or desperation, but in peace, honesty, and trust. In marrying Zach, Jenny didn't just find a new partner, she found herself. She proved that resilience doesn't fade with age, and that no betrayal is powerful enough to erase the possibility of happiness. Her story, once filled with scandal and tragedy, became a story of strength and renewal. Jenny Slatton reclaimed her life. Jenny Slatton's journey shows us that love is not always easy, and it is not always forever. Sometimes, the people we trust most can hurt us in ways we never imagined. But it also shows us something greater, that it's never too late to start again. Jenny's strength, her courage to walk away, and her ability to find love again with Zach prove that new beginnings are always possible, no matter your age, no matter your past. From love across borders, to heartbreak in courtrooms, to peace in a new marriage, Jenny's story is one of survival and hope. And in the end, she reminds us all of one simple truth. Happiness is not found in someone else. It is found in choosing yourself. This was the incredible journey of Jenny Slatton, a story of love, betrayal, survival, and ultimately, redemption. 90-day Fiancé. Sumit and Jenny confess they're in financial crisis as neither of them works a job. And are Sumit and Jenny really broke? Where did all their TLC money go? Sumit's mother digs in Jenny's stuff after they moved in together. The drama is finally on. And Jenny's spaghetti recipe made Sumit question his entire life. Ruins her first impression. I will explain everything. 90-day Fiancé. Sumit and Jenny confess they're in financial crisis as neither of them works a job. Moving in with his parents has been in the works for Sumit Singh and Jenny Slatin. In the next season of The Other Way, they will showcase their new obstacles. Nevertheless, the true motivations behind this choice perplexed the viewers of 90-day Fiancé. Sumit and Jenny seem to have told their admirers the truth at long last. The former acknowledged that he was in a financial bind following his job loss. Both he and his wife are unemployed, he said. Therefore, the TLC stars intend to begin a fresh phase of their life. The enormous age difference and cultural differences between Jenny and Sumit presented a number of difficulties. The former's connection with her in-laws was never particularly strong. A lot of people are looking forward to the new season because of the drama they promised to provide. Just what are they doing? Tell me what they showed. At first, Jenny Slatin struggled to get along with Sumit's parents. After they secretly tied the knot, the latter's family severed all ties with him. Sana, the mother of the 90-day Fiancé star, even considered Jenny to be his grandma rather than a potential mate because of her advanced age. Her incessant probing and dictatorial style are traits that Jenny has long despised in her mother-in-law. How the two ladies could possibly remain in one spot is a mystery to viewers. The new teaser for The Other Way was posted by TLC to hint at the couple's emotional turmoil and turbulence. Sumit revealed his intention to reside with his parents in the document. Yay, Jenny said to her in-laws. However, throughout the confessional, she failed to display any enthusiasm for the concept. It appeared like the reality TV star was not a fan of the notion. Since Sumit had his wife live with his parents, the audience was very critical of him. Jenny and Sumit have made a long-awaited comeback to their television screens. The upcoming season of the spin-off from The Other Way will presumably have them sharing the new set of tasks. Everyone is watching to see what happens next in the couple's lives. To give fans a sneak peek at Sumit and Jenny's most recent adventure, TLC has released a new teaser. The couple detailed their progress thus far in it. Due to the disapproval of Sumit's parents, the 90-day Fiancé couples had to discreetly tie the knot. Jenny and Sumit are relieved that they were able to overcome all the obstacles and continue their love. However, fresh developments are about to occur in their lives. The reality TV personalities have come keen about their financial troubles. Because of this, Sumit announced that they will be moving in with his parents in order to save money. When told the news, Jenny appeared the least thrilled. The look on her face was obvious to her fans. They can't wait for the show's upcoming drama. A number of viewers have also questioned the reality of the TLC star's financial predicament. In the trailers, Sumit acknowledged that he had lost his job. He insisted that his wife get a job, but she was not on board with the idea. The reality TV stars were thus forced to devise a plan to conquer the challenge. Are Sumit and Jenny really broke? Where did all their TLC money go? Jenny Slatin and Sumit Singh have been famous for a while. They have returned after a considerable amount of time to recount their adventure. The 90-day Fiancé couple's marriage is far from perfect. On air, Jenny and Sumit opened out about their money problems. As a result of financial constraints, they were forced to reside with the former's family. In order to maintain a steady stream of income, the reality TV stars are also using their savings to start a little cafe. On the other hand, viewers feel like something is off with the plot involving Sumit and Jenny. They suspect the couple is being dishonest about their financial situation. For a long time, the TLC star was in the spotlight. Even after all these years of country life, Sumit and Jenny still can't have their own place. Where do they go wrong? Why are the fans perplexed? At first, Jenny's acceptance as Sumit Singh's wife was met with some resistance from her family. For a number of years, they severed all ties with him. It took a lot of effort, but the 90-Day Fiancé stars were able to get their love back. For over 7 years, Sumit and Jenny were absent from home. The former, however, lost his work and had to rely on his family for support. He needed to figure out how to bail out of the financial jam. The news saddened Jenny. She had no interest in sharing a home with Sumit's folks or his brother's relatives. She is finding it very difficult to adapt to her in-laws and all the recent changes in her life. The reality TV star is also expected to help out around the house and listen to her mother-in-law's instructions. So Jenny is eager to get out of there as fast as she can. Lots has been going on HEA for Sumit and Jenny. The former is planning to start a new business and get his finances in order. With the support of his family, he opened a cafe that he had invested in. Both Jenny and her husband are pitching in to launch their firm. She will stop at nothing to regain her independence. Fans, nevertheless, are perplexed as to why the pair keeps having money problems. A fan of 90-Day Fiancé recently began a post in which they questioned Sumit and Jenny's spending habits in relation to the show's earnings. Every couple on TLC gets paid for each episode, doesn't it? The OP wrote. Along with his brother's family, they now reside with his parents. Before investing in the family business, the user believes Sumit should buy a house for himself. After being absent from the show for a while, many viewers felt that Sumit and Jenny weren't doing much to make money. He rejected employment until they were bankrupt and had to relocate in with his parents, one admirer wrote. Sumit and Jenny, according to another user, have no idea how to budget their money and waste it on meaningless things. Both parties have taken advantage of early retirement and are now receiving Social Security benefits. Someone else commented, saying, I believe. Reddit reports that $650 each month. Thus, the audience thinks $650 is a substantial sum in Indian currency. A lot of people also think Jenny spends a significant penny on her clothing and shoes. The reality TV personality may be hiding the truth about their money problems. Have you any thoughts on the matter? Sumit's mother digs in Jenny's stuff after they moved in together. The drama is finally on. Jenny is moving in with Sumit Singh's mom, so mom is getting her hands dirty. She is trying to get her daughter-in-law to do what she wants by keeping a close watch on her. Since Jenny hadn't given Sana permission to do so, she dug into her belongings and started sorting them out. Yet there's more. Jenny lost her composure because this obviously bothered her. Evidently, she didn't enjoy having to watch while her possessions were examined directly in front of her. Is that so? After hearing this, how did Jenny feel? What was her message? The tea is pretty hot, so you'll want to keep reading to find out what happened. Guests on 90 Days of Love, Jenny and Sumit, are facing a financial dilemma. They are relocating back in with their parents to save money because they are in a financial bind. Jenny clearly isn't a fan of the dynamics, and she certainly wasn't planning on making this her permanent residence. Jenny broke the news that she had second thoughts about moving in with Sumit's parents. The reason behind this is that her right to privacy would be violated, preventing her from leading her life according to her own desires. When Sumit lost his job, all of this transpired. He is battling to make ends meet because he does not have a source of income. Jenny, who starred in 90-Day Fiancé, is now witnessing his biggest fear realized. Everything she owns has been moved to her in-laws' residence. The movers transport Jenny's belongings to Sana's house, as shown in a recent exclusive clip that ET released. It seems like there was a lot of stuff, and the movers were exhausted from moving it all. Jenny asked Sumit whether they could hire somebody to help unload when everything finally arrived at Sana's apartment. Still, he went on to describe how his family could be of assistance to her, but he had no idea that Sana would wind up being more of a nuisance and less of a help. Sana wasted no time in voicing her disapproval of Jenny's clothing hoarding and inquiring about the rationale behind her extensive collection. Sana went on to take one of Jenny's sweatshirts and assert that it was completely too small for her. She asked her own daughter to keep it after she handed it to her without consulting the second person. Since Jenny was upset over Sana getting involved in her case, it was evident that Jenny had gone insane. She wanted to tell Sana to get out of her stuff, but she restrained herself, she told the cameras. Further, Jenny probed Sumit to clarify whether this conduct was ingrained in the family or inherited from his mother. Such occurrences are common in joint families, which is what Sumit was attempting to convey. Evidently, Jenny was not prepared to endure such behavior and did not enjoy it. Are you in agreement? Leave a comment and tell us. Jenny's spaghetti recipe made Sumit question his entire life, ruins her first impression. Jenny Slaton, star of 90 Day Fiancé, invited Sumit and his family over for a dinner of her famous spaghetti. Maybe she felt the need to demonstrate her maximum potential. The entire Singh family began to reevaluate their lives after just one bite of her food, something she was completely unaware of. Yeah, you heard it correctly. Since eating such spaghetti wasn't even mentioned in the contract, Sumit's family shifted uncomfortably in their seats and pondered what they had agreed to. Is that so? Does Jenny have any culinary skills? Tell me what's going on here. Tell me Sana's reaction. This topic is pretty intense, so you should keep reading to find out more. The star of 90 Day Fiancé living with her in-laws has put Jenny in a position where she must be extra careful not to upset them. But now it appears she must do everything she has never done before. Jenny would be the one to prepare and serve the family every single day, according to Sana's new announcement in the show. Jenny will learn everything from her family, Sana promised, but the latter was not in the spirit of helping out. She was forthright about her incompetence in the kitchen and Sumit's superior skills in the kitchen. The famous person went on to say that she and Sumit would be opening the cafe together and that she would be helping him operate it. The story, though, is far from over. Jenny, who stars on 90 Day Fiancé, recently made an announcement about fixing supper for her whole family. She came clean about her culinary skills, admitting that spaghetti was her sole competency. You may think the famous person took her sweet time whipping it up, but that's not the case. On the other hand, Jenny appears to have a recipe where she just boils spaghetti, tosses it in sauce, then sprinkles Parmesan cheese on top. Yeah, you heard it correctly. This is Jenny's last interpretation of spaghetti. By that point, Sumit's inner chef would have definitely committed suicide, but he did his best to gently explain to Jenny that this wasn't spaghetti according to the rest of the world. Jenny, on the other hand, is dead set on the idea that her spaghetti is the greatest. Sumit could question her daughter about her spaghetti success in America, she boasted to him. Singh chose to ignore the situation and laugh it off, but Sana was determined to speak up. The fact that she didn't know what the dish was and that she didn't care for Jenny's cooking were both acknowledged by her. In addition, Jenny's brother-in-law informed the cameras that the Indian palate found Jenny's spaghetti overpowering. No more today. What are you thinking about this gossip today? Let us know in the comments, and stay tuned by subscribing to our channel to get more updates like this. Thank you.